guys! As promised, this is episode 1 of what can be, if you guys like it, a wedding. This can just be a series of me helping you guys know what to do and know what to ask when you walk into these places and when you're doing things for your wedding, ladies out there, because I know I'm not alone in this, and here are 10 things that you need to ask when you walk into a wedding venue, and do not leave until you know the answers to all of the questions, or you know you're not going to go there, because there are so many things that they will get you on. First of all, when you're looking for a venue, of course, you need to know the venue size and the aesthetic, how many people you're inviting. You need to make a list before you show up at a venue, because they need to know how many people they're going to try and pack in a room before they can even recommend to you what room, what setup, how it's going to go. So that's the homework that you need to do on your end. Your prerequisite as it is, walk in there knowing how many people you're going to have and what the aesthetic you want is. Thing number 1. What does the space cost? And a lot of this will be mentioned on the website, but sometimes it's not. And what I'm finding is the more questions you ask, the more caveats there is to their planned budgeting. Usually what I've found is that from May to September or October, Saturdays are their most expensive. And then Fridays and Sundays are a little bit less expensive, and then weekdays are the least expensive. I also found that if you want to do a January or a November wedding, or even into April, those dates are less expensive. For us, we want to get married outdoors, so it's really difficult to try and accommodate. I don't really care about getting married in the summer, but we want to have the ceremony outside. Therefore, we want to try and strive for a month that is warm. Yeah, so it's hard for us to try and find something not in the summer. Number 2, ask if they have a preferred caterer. Lots of these places work with specific caterers, and that is the only catering company or multiple, 2 or 3 catering companies that will work with. And sometimes they'll find a venue that is $1,200, and you're like, oh my god, $1,200, that's perfect, that's exactly what I need. And then they will slap you across the face, which brings me into number 3, with a $6,000 catering minimum, and you're like, no. Especially when you only have 120 people coming to your wedding. I'm shooting for between $25 and $35 a person. That's between $25,000 and $35,000 a person. It doesn't equate to $6,000. I'm never going to spend that much on catering unless you make me. So no. And that's another thing. If they do have a preferred caterer, if they don't have a minimum, make sure you find out what their per person average is, or just get some menus. They usually give them a per person number. And then another thing is make sure you know what's included in the room rental. Does that include linens, chair covers, setup and rehearsal time? Setup and rehearsal time is really important to know what you're going to get before and after the event. Sometimes I have found that they will tack on chair covers at $3 to $5 per chair, and you can buy them for less than that for one thing and then just sell them on eBay after or whatever. But it can, say they're $5 a chair, that's $500 for chair covers and sashes, and sometimes the sashes are not even included. It's really important that you ask those questions and know what you're willing to spend to have covered chairs. And for me, I don't even really want the chairs covered as long as they're not ugly. If they're ugly chairs, then we're gonna have to play hardball, because I don't know. I've even found in some scenarios that it is cheaper to rent an entirely new set of chairs than to pay the $5 per chair cover fee. It's a fucked up world, let me tell you. Number 5 is find out what your bar minimum and bar setup fee is. For us, we don't want to pay a per person charge of the cheapest I found was $11 or $12 for beer and wine, which I think is pretty reasonable, because that allows everybody to drink for $11 all night long. Beer and wine only, not liquor. And I think that's a pretty good deal, but we don't want to pay that because only half of our guests are probably going to drink. Therefore, we don't want to pay $1,100 when we should only have to pay $550. See what I'm getting at here? So there's some places, which I prefer this, some places will let you bring your own booze, but most of them won't, because of liquor licenses, so it gets really complicated really fast. The ideal thing that I have found for us is that we just want to find a place who will let us, put down an $800 max and say we're willing to pay $800, and then once the bar tabs hit $800 or whatever, we decide, everybody cuts off and it turns into a cash bar. That way we're paying for people's booze, because the majority of my family will be traveling across the country to come to my wedding, and the least I can do is buy them a couple of drinks, in my opinion. So take it as you will, but that's what we have found that we want. So really important to know what the alcohol situation is. If that's not a factor for you guys, then it saves you so much money. Number 6 is most places will have an additional hourly charge. So if you want to say the rental is for 4 or 5 hours, but you want to do 6 hours, or you want to have an extra hour before the event or whatever, usually the extra hourly charge is pretty much negligible in my opinion of a wedding budget. It's like maybe $250 to get an extra hour, and if that's what you really need to make your evening better, like sometimes the rentals are only for like 4 hours, and you're like, maybe 5 would be better. I don't know. It just depends on what you think you need, but for like $250, typically you can get the room for another hour, and they just need to know ahead of time. And I know that in all the events I work all the time, I'm the middleman between the client saying, we need another half hour, and the event place saying, it's time to go. And so here I am trying to broker this negotiation, and the client usually has been drinking. All I'm saying is plan ahead, just pay for the extra hour. It's really negligible in the long run, I think. Number 7, do they have any friggin' weird rules? And number 7 and number 9 are gonna be similar in that way. I went to one venue and the lady was like, oh, you have to have a registered DJ from the American DJ Association to do your wedding here, because we just have had some bad experiences with DJs. I was like, oh, well, like, you know, I work for an event company. I can bring in some of my own professional gear and professionals and run it, and just like have someone from the bridal party play music. And they're like, oh, no, we don't allow that. And I was like, why? And they're like, well, because your gear has to be insured. We just want professionals handling it. And I was like, our gear is insured. I'm a professional event company. I'm not really sure what you're trying to get at here. Anyway, we're not doing our wedding there. And that lady was a bitch. But she also said we had to have licensed florist, because they don't want bugs coming out of people's gardens due to bugs, etc., etc. She was a little bit flexible when I was like, oh, I was just gonna make them myself. I'm not pulling them from a garden though. And then she was like, oh, fine, whatever, that's fine. But like a lot of places will just have weird friggin' like rules, like you have to use this, or you have to use this people, or some. I've even heard of some people having to use a specific cake company, or if you use your own cake company, you have to pay an additional fee. Just find out what that specific venue's weird rules are, and hopefully they don't have any. The more chill venues, like I'm almost tempted to just pick a venue that isn't perfect, just because the proprietors are so relaxed. They'll just kind of say, you know, do you, like, this is your day, not like, oh, you have to use this and spend this much money on this. That is what bothers me the most. Number 8, do they have ready rooms? Does your contract for your space include a getting ready room? Is it an extra fee? How long do you get it for? Some places will just like give you a spare room. Some places have ready rooms for you. I've seen one of the places we looked at charged $1,200 for a ready room, and it was really cool because you got it literally from like 9 a.m. till 2 a.m. So if you wanted, and these ready rooms were like huge, and you could, you know, party in there after the wedding was over until 2 a.m. if you wanted to, but $1,200 for a room to party in when you could just go to a bar, it's kind of like, I don't know, it was cool, but I just didn't feel like I was willing to pay for it. Number 9, the surprise is what I like to call it, but it is the surprise 20% banquet fee that a lot of places like to tack on. They'll say this is your food, this is your room rental, and then they'll charge you a 20% tax on top of that for the staff to run it. So this 20% is like hidden in its price. You're paying 20% on top of everything you've already priced out. No ma'am. If you're gonna have a 20% banquet fee, tell me up front. I don't want to know at the end of negotiations that you're gonna charge us 20% of everything else, even though those services fees should be included. I don't want to know at the end. You should tell me beforehand, and then I will know what I'm actually going to be charged the whole time, because I'm like sitting in a tour and I'm like, oh, this is great, this much, this is all really manageable. And then they're like, slap, 20% banquet fee because we're worth it. And I'm like, no, you're not. You're not worth it. Last but not least, some places want to charge you a butt load for a cake cutting fee. Some places won't even let your family cut the cake for you for free. And they'll be like, oh, we're really just charging you for the dishes. And it's like, bro, I'll bring my own plastic plates. And they're like, no, you have to, if you're gonna have a cake, this is how we do it. And it's like, $300 for someone to cut your cake? Excuse me? That is 10 questions. You need to, it's more than 10 questions. It's like a slew of ranting, mostly. But it's sort of like 10 questions that you need to ask somebody before you sign on the dotted line at a wedding venue. And there are some places that are so shady, they will not even tell you what it is until after. It's a crazy world we live in where this can happen, and I am honestly, I'm going to start looking for non-wedding venues next. The thing is, a lot of times you're gonna get an extra bump when you say it's a wedding, and sometimes it's justified based on the amenities you get, and sometimes it's not. So you just have to be really careful, but it's not like I struggle with being like, oh, well, just don't tell them it's a wedding, because like, how are they not gonna know? You know what I'm saying? I don't know. But yeah, there is a markup on weddings, and there's tons of news stories out there about it, but just be smart. You don't have to let the wedding industry take advantage of you if you don't want to. You can make choices and make decisions and be your own person and just say fuck them, because the more people that do that, the less this will be allowed. And that is all I have to say. Bye guys, see you next time.